This imagery of JFK standing behind his podium speaking to a crowd of some impressive size is one of the most well-known images in American history. So when I saw that this speech was available as an option for this project, I knew what I had to do. And the reason why I wanted to sign up for this speech so quickly is because the story behind it really fascinates me. On top of that, thanks to course material, I have also learned how to analyze it from a rhetorical perspective. Starting with the rhetorical situation, then the rhetoric of the actual speech, then the impact it had on the country afterwards, there really is more to this speech than just the ever so popular quote that came out of it. So let's start with the rhetorical situation here, and the context of why this speech even happened in the first place. The year is 1962, and we're in the middle of what's called the space race, which was a race to see what country could explore or even colonize outer space the quickest. The contenders are as follows. In the blue corner, we have the USA, and in the red corner, the Soviet Union. And at this point in time, the Soviets were winning by a lot. At this time, they had already sent the first man-made satellite into orbit, as well as the first man to orbit around the Earth. This left the American population in a bit of a struggle, where one group was convinced that they were about to lose and that trying any more would be a waste of time and effort, and another group who was desperate for a victory of some sort. Either way, nearly none of the population thought that the chances of winning the space race were high. So, faced with the problem of an upset population, what does the government do to calm down its citizens? They don't fix the problem with tape or glue or a hammer and nails, they go to fix it with a Kennedy. Clearly the best tool in the toolbox, right? Well, actually not necessarily. Kennedy was part of the population that wanted a victory over the Soviets, so after speaking with members of his cabinet, he determined that the best move would be to try and send someone to the moon for the first time in human history. But Congress was a bit hesitant to go through with those plans. After all, there were a lot of problems. This moon mission would be expensive, dangerous, tedious, and was it even feasible in the first place? No wonder Congress was so split. This plan seemed insane at first. On top of that, the population was so skeptical that this was even a good idea. To address those concerns and more, Kennedy went to Rice University, which was a key player in helping to get land set aside for what would eventually become the Houston Space Center, and delivered what would eventually be known as one of the most iconic speeches in American history. The speech itself, in its entirety, is quite impressive. I obviously can't explain all of it for you here, but I want to summarize a few of the key things Kennedy does here. One of the first things he does is recognize that we are still behind in the space race. This is an important step in analyzing the work we still had to do in order to pull ahead. But before he goes into what we still need to do, he does something really cool. With this quote, Kennedy compresses 50,000 years into just 50 years, which officially cements his status as a Time Lord. But beyond that, it also makes the entirety of human history into something we measly non-Time Lord peasants can actually perceive. With this compression, you can make the following claims about human history shown by this timeline. Nothing for the first 40 years, and in all of humanity's greatest achievements feeling like they were only yesterday. What powerful imagery this is. With this, Kennedy could easily convince the audience that our rate of evolution as a species is so rapid that soon nothing would be outside the realm of possibility. Knowing this, Kennedy then moves on to mention these things we have yet to do, going to the moon. Kennedy states how it was already impressive by itself that we managed to sail the ocean, climb the tallest mountains, and so on, but the question of why was still on the minds of a lot of the population. On that front, Kennedy explains why. We choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. And do the other things. Ah, yes, the other things. Can't forget about those other things. The other things refers to the collection of humanity's other monumental achievements, but when the line is taken by itself without the rest of the context, it feels hilariously unprofessional. Anyways, the point of that line, as well as a few other lines after it, was to provide a sense of inspiration. Here you are, tasked with one of the greatest challenges yet, and Kennedy responds to it by giving the audience a sense of determination, that this is a thing we can do, that this is feasible. From a rhetorical perspective, the way he phrases these lines is immensely effective. Kennedy finishes his speech with a few more mentions on how we're still behind in the space race, and how there is still work to do, but he is confident that we will be able to pull ahead. The impact of the speech is undeniable by today's standards. However, at the time, it actually didn't help as much as he had hoped. Congress was still hesitant to take action, and the population was only slightly less panicked. Soon after, it gets even worse when Kennedy is assassinated, his plans still not having seen the light of day. However, we all know that's not the end of it, because, well, the mission was eventually completed. In 1969, America did finally send a landing party to the moon, and with that, the space race was over. Following that, the population was able to spend the time they needed to look back at the speech and realize just how good it was. It's a sign of hope, determination, confidence in the face of extreme difficulty. And now that the moon landing was successful, it's a symbol of victory. As such, the words "we choose to go to the moon" became iconic. As a matter of fact, this speech is unofficially called "We Choose to Go to the Moon." Its actual name is Address at Rice University on the Nation's Space Effort, which, well, doesn't quite roll off the tongue as easily. It does, however, give me the perfect setup for a "the cooler Daniel" joke, and you bet I'm going to capitalize on that perfect setup. Overall, this speech was, at the time, not as appreciated or impactful as it should have been, but it would eventually see its time to shine. Rhetorically, the symbolism and comparisons made in the speech allow for a near-perfect setup for a speech with the intent of calming a panicked audience while also convincing them to be excited for a truly monumental moment in all of recorded history. So, in conclusion, if you're ever struggling with some big change in your life and you're not quite sure what to do to overcome it, choose to go to the moon. And do the other things. Definitely don't forget to do the other things. And if you had trouble following along with this presentation or were just left confused by it all, don't worry, there's a few students after me who will be giving a presentation on the exact same speech. That's all the time I have. Thanks for listening.